Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again I'm coming to you with another range report. And today's range report is on a pretty darn cool gun, especially if you're a fan of 1980s television shows. You may recognize it from Miami Vice. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Dornaus Dixon Bren Ten, kind of the OG 10mm pistol made in the late 1970s and early 80s. As I mentioned, it was carried by Don Johnson in Miami Vice. It's obviously based off of the CZ75 and I think a couple of other guns, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. This gun is very collectible because it's kind of a big manufacturing fail. When this gun came out, it was supposed to change the gun industry, but like many guns that make that promise, it didn't live up to expectations, and there were problems when it came to magazines and other things. And we're going to talk about that as well. But before we talk about this gun and the things that I like and don't like, as always, I want to thank the people that make these videos possible. First and foremost is the owner of this really cool pistol who lent it to the channel to give me a chance to shoot it and review it. His name is Jack, and Jack, thank you so much for allowing me once again to shoot the awesome guns of your collection. I always want to thank my Patreon supporters because through their monthly donations and support, they help keep the lights on around here, and I couldn't do it without them. And if you guys want to join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month, there's going to be a link in the description below. And as always, I want to thank my primary sponsor who always provides the ammunition for these range reports, thus making them financially feasible for me, my good friend Mark from Brownworks. And if you're here watching this review on a really cool firearm like the Bren Ten, a gun that has an all-metal frame that takes panel grips, you probably have a great collection of your own. You probably own a 1911, a CZ75, a Browning High Power, or a Beretta 92, just to name a few. And you've been thinking to yourself, it'd be great if I could get a set of customized wood grips to make my firearm unique and one of a kind. Well, I have the perfect grip company for you. Brownworks. Brownworks is a custom grip company making a wide variety of grips for a wide variety of firearms out of a wide variety of exotic woods and materials. Mark can make grips out of laminate woods. He can put on custom logos, custom engravings, custom textures, and finish these grips in a wide variety of colors. He's also always innovating. He can create wood panel grips for modern sporting rifles and even make custom pistol stands with those custom logos and engravings. So I'm going to ask you guys to go check out his website. I'm going to put a link in the comments section below as well as a coupon code for 10% off your first order. So I'm going to ask you guys to go over there, see everything he has to offer. And when you place that custom order, please tell Mark the Texas Gun Vault sent you. All right, so let's talk about the pistol that we're going to be taking to the range and reviewing today, the Dornaus Dixon Bren Ten. This was a gun that was designed in collaboration with Colonel Jeff Cooper of Gunsight fame, one of the most prolific gun writers and trainers of the 20th century. It is chambered in 10mm. They did offer a 45 variant of it. There were only 1,400 of these pistols made, which kind of surprised me because there's a lot of people out there that like to collect these, and I was aware of this gun. A lot of times, if a gun was made in very small numbers, a lot of people don't know about it, but a lot of people know about the Bren Ten. But as I mentioned, it was kind of a commercial flop. They had lots of problems with the magazines, and that's really what brought the company down. This gun, as I said, was also offered in 45, and they came out with a magazine that would work with both 10mm and 45. They were not known for being very reliable. Later in the run, they worked with Metgar to come up with a dedicated 10mm magazine, and you'll know you have one of those if it says 10mm on the side. If it doesn't have that, it's designed for both 45 and 10mm, but they had lots of problems with these too. And because they had such a short supply of them, they would often ship the guns from the factory without a magazine. Can you imagine any other company doing that today? Imagine you buy a Bren Ten and it doesn't have a magazine, and you can't get the magazines. Can you imagine how upset you would be? I also mentioned that this gun was used in the television show Miami Vice. It was carried by Don Johnson. In fact, the gun that he used in that show looked exactly like this one. Even though they had a couple of different variations of this gun, he used the one that had the black grips and the all stainless finish. So you guys can go watch that show and see this gun in action. Now, I told you this gun does draw a lot of inspiration from the CZ75, and I wanted to show you that. I brought a couple guns out here that I think they borrowed some of the designs from. First, as I mentioned, the CZ75. This is my CZ75B Retro, a gun that you guys all know and love, made in the Czech Republic. And here, of course, is the Bren Ten. And you guys can see a lot of the aesthetics look the same. The controls look the same. The grip angle's the same. A lot of it is the same. And this is a tried and true design. However, something that is a little bit different that you'll notice is in the front of the pistol, we do have a barrel bushing. And that barrel bushing looks very reminiscent of a 1911. So here is my Colt Series 70 1911. You can see this barrel bushing right here. Now the barrel bushing in the Bren Ten is not designed to come out in a field strip. You don't take it apart like you do in 1911. And when you do take this gun apart, which by the way, I am doing a field strip video on this as well, you'll discover that the recoil spring assembly inside looks very much like a 1911. But there's another gun that I don't think people really realize I think this gun took inspiration from, and I noticed it when I was able to handle it here on the workbench, and that gun is the famous SIG P210. And I think they took the rear of the slide from a P210 and made this. As you can see, it has that little elevated section here in the back where the rear sight is. Not many guns have that aesthetic, but the P210 does. And of course, this is a very revered pistol, and you can kind of see that same design there on the back of the slide. So I think they took that design aesthetic from the P210. So this gun draws a lot of inspiration from classic designs and guns that are known to work and guns that people love. So I think from that standpoint, it probably had a lot going for it when it hit the market. But now I've told you a lot about this gun. So let's talk about the things that I like and don't like. And the first thing I love about this gun is the fact that it's all stainless steel. I love all stainless steel guns. They're easy to clean, they're easy to maintain, plus they just have that cool look. I don't own enough guns in stainless steel, but this gun just has that right look. And the one that was used in Miami Vice was an all stainless gun, just like this one. I love the fact too, this gun was designed around the 10mm. I don't like it when companies take designs, let's say a gun chambered in 9mm, and then just shove a 40 or a 10mm in it. It puts a lot of wear and tear on the frame. The gun obviously recoils a lot more, but this gun was designed around the 10, so it's designed to be more durable. Now, I don't know many people that have torture tested these guns because they're so rare, but these are supposed to last, being able to be shot in 10mm for a long time. Now, the other thing too that I have to give this company credit for is their innovation. They were thinking ahead. You have to realize this was the 1970s and the 1980s. And at that time, there really wasn't a lot of innovation. Now, we all know about 5 years later, Glock would be introduced to the US market. And of course, that was a huge game changer. But they were trying to dethrone the 1911 with this design. They were really forward thinking, trying to encapsulate designs from other guns and to create something that was better. So I have to give them some credit on that, even though, as I said, this is considered to be a commercial flop. Now let's talk about a few things about this gun that I don't like. And the first one I've already told you about, the magazine issues. Well, this gun came with a number of magazines that Jack let me borrow. This one here in stainless steel does have the 10mm marking on the side, so it's designed for this particular gun. But you're supposed to be able to run the 45/10mm mags in this gun. They will go in with no problem. But when I push this magazine button down, I have to literally strip this mag out. Now, this gun does have a little screw on the side, and if you screw this down, it is designed to capture the mag when you release it. However, it is released right now, or it's all the way out. In fact, I'm still struggling with this magazine right now to get this one out. So if that screw was down and I tried to drop this mag, it wouldn't pop out. But it is. So that's not what's holding that magazine in. So the dimensions of a lot of these mags do not work very well when you insert them. So that is a huge problem. Now let's talk about the handling of this gun. And this is something I noticed here on the workbench. This gun is super rattly. It just rattles. You can tell the tolerances of this gun are super loose. I am very disappointed with that, and when I rack the slide, it just sounds like a mechanical mess. I don't like that sound. There are a lot of guns from this era that have a much smoother action. I'm very disappointed in that. So as you can tell from the sound of that slide, it just is not very, very good. Now, let's talk about the safeties. This gun has two safeties. We have a frame-mounted safety right here in the usual place, but this is not a decocker. So right now the hammer's back. You can't push this down like you can on an HK or Beretta and decock the hammer. So you're saying to yourself, well, it is a double-action, single-action gun. How would I safely decock it? Well, you really don't want to pull the trigger and have your thumb on the hammer because that may slip and fire the gun. So they came up with a little button here on the slide. And you push this button through and that prevents the firing pin from entering the chamber. So now you can pull the trigger or you can lower the hammer safely. But let me tell you, this is a really weird manual of arms and you have to push that back through the other side so you can fire the gun. And I can see if you're not used to this, you might think you've pushed it and you want to decock the gun and you pull the trigger and it goes bang when you don't want it to bang. Or you forget to push the button back and you're ready for it to go bang and it goes click. You don't want that either. That, in my opinion, is a terrible, terrible design. And also when you're racking this slide, it's really easy because you grab it right here to push that button and now it's engaged and you didn't even realize it. That is absolutely terrible. I don't know why they did that. But I know some of you guys are probably asking yourself, how good is the trigger? Well, I want to test this trigger before taking it to the range. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust the camera. I'm going to get out the lineman trigger pull weight gauge and we're going to see what this trigger is all about. So let me go ahead and adjust the camera now. So I know there's not a lot of videos out there where they actually test the trigger and see how good it is and what its pull weight is. So that's what I'm hoping to add to the Bren Ten conversation. Now this is a double action, single action pistol, and I have to tell you that the double action pull is really, really heavy. It won't even read on this. I would say it's probably about 14 pounds, but I can test the single action trigger. So I'll go ahead and drop the magazine, ensure there's no ammunition in it, of course. Pull the slide back, ensure there is no ammunition in the chamber. So let's go ahead and take a look at this trigger first. So here it is in single action. We have actually a pretty darn good take up here. It is smooth. You do hit a wall, and that is a pretty crisp single action pull. Let's take a look now at the reset. Reset's not too bad, and you're right back at that wall. I would say the single action side of this trigger is actually pretty darn good. So now let's take a look at the double action pull. This is long and very heavy, and you cannot feel that wall. It kind of surprises you. As I said, it's probably 13, 14, or 15 pounds. And it will not read on this gauge. All right, so let's see what this trigger actually measures at. Let's clear the averages and let's test it out in single action. Our first pull, 3 pounds, 15.1 ounces. 3 pounds, 13.9 ounces. Three pounds, 13.1 ounces. Three pounds, 12.0 ounces. And finally, we have 3 pounds, 13.4 ounces for an average of 3 pounds, 13.5 ounces. So overall, a pretty darn good trigger on a semi-automatic 10mm pistol made in the 1980s. I'm actually really kind of impressed with that. So the trigger is kind of okay, especially on the single action side. Double action, I think it might be just a little bit too heavy. All right, so I've told you a lot about this gun, talked a lot about this gun, so let's get it to the range. So as always, I'm going to start off with the target at 7 yards. I'm going to put 2 mags through this thing, and I'm just excited to see how this thing shoots and what my initial thoughts and impressions are. So let's go to the range and see what this pistol is all about. So first, let's talk about the shootability of this pistol. I have to say, for something chambered in 10mm, and I know people are going to say the 10mm of today is not the 10mm of the 80s. I totally get it. But I was actually expecting a little bit more from this pistol. You do get a lot of muzzle flip, but the recoil impulse in your hand is actually really light. It's a very comfortable gun to shoot. Now let's talk about a couple of magazine issues we had. When it came to the magazine that has the 45/10 compatibility, I did have a failure to feed. So the magazine had 10 rounds in it, which by the way is the capacity. So I think the name Bren Ten comes from the caliber and the capacity. It did not want to strip off that first round and the magazine got stuck. But then at the very end, you'll notice once again, I was trying to strip the magazine out and it's kind of hard to do. So magazine issues are definitely a big problem with this gun. Now let's talk about the accuracy. I had to walk that up. I wasn't sure where these sights were going to be. However, once I figured it out, I have to say, the accuracy was there. So now let's double the distance on this target and let's go for the head on this IDPA silhouette and let's see if this accuracy continues, because now I know where to hold the sights on the target. So let's put another magazine down range and see how this group opens up or stays the same. And so at 15 yards, well, I did have one flyer, but all the other rounds were right where I wanted them to go. So I'm really impressed with the natural accuracy of this gun. It's a very shootable firearm, and it just shoots where you aim it. I am impressed with that, and I wasn't expecting that because the gun is so rattly and the tolerances just don't feel right. But it is functioning flawlessly. The only issues I've had have been with the magazines, and that's not the gun's fault. I guess it is kind of the gun company's fault, but they really should have rethought this before they released these to the public back in the 80s. But the gun itself is functioning flawlessly and seems to be accurate. Alright, so the next test I'm going to do is the bench rest test, or the shoot from a barrier test. And I'm going to set the target out about as far as I can at this indoor range. So far the gun has been accurate, but I want to take as much of the human element out of the equation as possible. So here we go, another magazine, and let's shoot this from a bench and see how it does. And so I have to say, this gun shoots really darn good. It makes me look like a better shot than I actually am. I did not think it would be this accurate and actually this fun to shoot. It's so comfortable. So it's really impressing me. Alright, so the next test I want to do is the hollow point test. Now I have to be honest, I don't know how prevalent hollow points were in the early 1980s when this gun came out, but I know if you own this gun and maybe you want to use it as a home defense firearm or maybe even carry it, although I wouldn't recommend it because it is so rare, but you want to know how do hollow points function in it. Well, let's go back to the range and find out. I'll put a magazine of hollow points through this and just see how it does. And I can tell you, those loadings of 10mm were definitely a lot hotter than the other stuff I was using. And I think that's actually closer to the power of the 10mm back in the 1980s. So I think that was actually a good test, and we didn't have any issues. It fed from the magazine just fine, and the gun functioned flawlessly. Alright, so the next test I want to do is the quick magazine change test. Essentially, I want to shoot this gun as fast as I can, change the magazine out, see if I can get it back in action, and how well this gun shoots if I'm just point shooting it like in a defensive use. So here we go. Let me just shoot this thing fast, and maybe these magazines might give me a little bit of trouble, as you've seen. Well, with this nice trigger in it, I was able to shoot it really fast, and the gun is very shootable. It stays on target when you're just point shooting it, and I didn't have any issues with the magazines. But granted, I did start off with the 10mm magazine, which is what was designed for this gun, so it does fall out of there kind of fast. I think if I started off with the other one, I would have had an issue like I am right there. So I think if you have a magazine that runs in the gun well, I think it's actually pretty darn good in this capacity. All right, so the last test I want to do is the double action test, and I want to use this really weird slide safety and decock the gun after every shot. I'm just curious what the accuracy would be like if I'm only going to shoot this in double action. This might not be the most practical test, but I'm just curious with this long, heavy trigger pull, how accurate I can actually shoot it. And then we'll come back and I'll give you guys my final thoughts. And maybe because I'm shooting it slow and deliberate, the accuracy of this gun in double action is really good. It really impresses me. It's like when I shoot my SIG P-Series pistols, I shoot them better double action than single action for some reason. So it's exceeded my expectations in the accuracy department all around. So what are my final thoughts on the Dornaus Dixon Bren Ten chambered in 10mm? Well, the gun has a few pros. It runs well. It has very low recoil for a 10mm pistol, and it's extremely accurate for me. But there are a few cons. It feels cheap. The tolerances feel a little bit loose. It is a little bit rattly, and of course we have lots of issues with the magazines, and this is what brought the company down and really brought an end to the manufacturing of this pistol. So overall, I feel that with some refinement, this really could have been a grand slam. I can see so much potential in this pistol, and this particular example is very accurate and runs really well. And I've seen some other reviews of this firearm where that has not been the case. So I think this is an excellent example of this gun, and it has been a real honor and pleasure to get to shoot something so cool from the 1980s. So on my star system, how would I rate the Bren Ten? Well, it's okay. I'm really impressed with its accuracy, as I've mentioned, but there's definitely some issues with the magazine and the way that it feels in my hand. So overall, I'm going to give it 3 out of 5 stars. But if it didn't have the magazine issues and it had a little bit better, tighter tolerances, it'd probably be 5 out of 5. As I said, I see a lot of potential in this gun, and I'm really surprised more companies have not tried to take this design and run with it and make it into something great, because there's just so much here to work with that really could make it an all-star firearm. So what do you guys think? Do you like the idea of the Bren Ten? Do you remember watching it on the show Miami Vice? Have you ever shot one? Have you ever owned one? And what do you think about my experiences with this particular pistol? And did you know about it and all of the magazine issues it was known to have? I would love to know your thoughts on this really cool pistol in the comments section below. So, as always, thanks for watching. Except for problems with the magazine. But let's see what happened. Oh, fuck this again.